Hi. Today we're going to talk about simple interest and just a quick overview of Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is mainly about interest, interest paid by an investment, interest paid on a loan, and variations of these. In this section, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on an investment that pays simple interest, periodically giving interest directly to the investor. So let's start out with the definition. Let's zoom in just a little bit. Okay, start out with the definition. The simple interest on an investment or loan of P dollars at an annual interest rate of R for a time of T years is given by the formula I equals P times R times T. P is the principal, it's the principal, or it's the present value. And whenever we look at I equals P times R times T, that is based on an annual interest. And by annual, we say that the interest period is 1 year. If the interest rate is given as a monthly or weekly rate, then note that you're going to have to make adjustments to the annual rate to put it in the appropriate time. And note that you will also have to make adjustments to the length of time because that would have to be adjusted to years. The future, I'm not going to write with a highlighter. The future value of an investment of P dollars earning simple interest is given by F equals P times the quantity 1 plus R times T, or F equals P times the quantity 1 plus IN, where R is the annual interest rate and T is time in years, and I is the interest rate per period, and N is the number of periods. So you can use either formula, okay? Now, note that even though I didn't say it, you should have also started the simple interest formula I equals P times RT from the first page. So this is the next one, okay? So note that in general, simple interest growth is a linear function of the number of periods with intercept equal to the present value, and your slope is the interest per period. So that helps give you a visual of what's really happening with simple interest in terms of your slope and your y-intercept. So now let's look at an example, okay? Here, in example 1, we want to compute the simple interest for the specified time and the future value at the end of that time. Round your answers to the nearest cent. And feel free to pause the video throughout the example to do the calculations on your own, okay? So, P, so let's look. We have $10,100 is invested for 3 months at 11% per year. So let's remember that your simple interest formula is I equals P times RT. So let's see what we have. P is 10,100. R is equal to 11%. Now 11% means that is equal to 0.11. Okay, remember per 100. And T, it says that we are invested for 3 months out of the year. So that means that T is equal to 1/4, right? Because there's 12 months in the year. Okay, so 3 out of 12 is 1/4. So we can find our simple interest. This is equal to 10,100 times 0.11 times 1/4. I encourage you to pause the video now and compute that. When you do, you will get this is $277.75. So that is your simple interest. Okay. Now we also want to find our future value. So our future value, we have F. Notice that here you have F is equal to P times the quantity 1 plus RT. So if we just expand that for a second by distributing that P, that means it's P plus P times RT, where we know P times RT is just I. That's our simple interest. So our future value is P plus I, and we know what P is. P is 10,100. And then we're adding our simple interest, which we found to be 277.75. So this is equal to $10,377.75. And we're talking about money here. Okay, so we have our future value and we have our simple interest. Let's look at another example. Example 2. A 4-year bond costs $10,000 and will pay a total of $2,800 in interest over its lifetime. What is the annual interest rate? So here, what are we trying to find? If we are asked to find our annual interest rate, we're asked to find out what R is, okay? So let's figure out what we have or identify what we have. Well, we know that it says it pays a total of $2,800 in interest. So that means that we know that I is equal to 2,800. We also know that a 4-year bond costs $10,000. So we know that P is equal to $10,000. And we know that it's a 4-year bond, so that means T is equal to 4. Okay, no conversions necessary because it's given to us in terms of years. Let's move this back up. So we have I is equal to P times R times T. So that means we have I is 10,000 times R times 4, and that gives us 40,000 R. Okay, so that means that I is equal to 40,000 R. We can just write this here again if you would like. So we have I is equal to 40,000 R, which means, just so you can see it a little bit better here. It's 40,000 R, so you can divide both sides by 40,000. And remember, we know what I is. I is 2,800, so we can actually substitute that in. So we have 2,800 over 40,000 is equal to R. And if you put that into your calculators, you will find out that that's equal to 0.07 or 7%. Okay? So the annual interest rate is 7%. Okay, that's example 2. Note, companies and governments raise money by selling bonds. Selling bonds. A corporate bond promises to pay simple interest, usually twice per year, for a length of time until it matures, at which point it returns the original investment to the investor. Okay, so now let's look at a couple of more examples here. Example 3. So your total payment on a 4-year loan, which charged 9.5% annual simple interest, amounts to $30,360. How much did you originally borrow? So what do we have here? Let's remember first from future value that our formula is F equals P times the quantity 1 plus I times N. And we're using this formula here because in the problem we identify the interest rate per period and the number of periods. Okay. Again, you can use the other formula F equals P times the quantity 1 plus RT if you so choose to. Okay. So here it says, how much did you originally borrow? So we're not being asked for the future value. We're actually given the future value, which is $30,360. So we could solve this for P by dividing both sides by the quantity 1 plus I times N, and that will give us P. So this is what we're actually going to find for our problem. So P is equal to F divided by the quantity 1 plus I times N. Our F here, it says that it amounted to $30,360. So that's our F. Okay. And then we're going to divide that by the quantity 1 plus I is our interest rate per period, and it tells us that we have a 9.5% annual simple interest. Well, this 9.5% annual simple interest means that we have 0.095 as I. So we put in 0.095 here. N, remember, N is the number of periods that we have, and it says it's a 4-year loan, right? So we multiply that by 4. And then you enter it into your calculators. So remember, if you're entering this into your calculators, you want to put 30,360 divided by this quantity. So put all of this in parentheses. Okay? All right. And whenever you do that, you should pause the video and give it a try. When you do that, you get $22,000. So that's how much you originally borrowed. That's how much you originally borrowed. Okay, let's look at one last example. You are expecting a tax refund of $1,500 in 3 weeks. A tax preparer offers you a $1,500 loan for a fee of $60 to be repaid by your refund check when it arrives in 3 weeks. Thinking of the fee as interest, what weekly simple interest rate would you be paying on this loan? What is the corresponding annual rate? So this one has a few steps, so we can do that. So if we think of simple interest was I equals P times RT, or I is equal to P times I times N, your interest times the number of periods, right? So here for us, we know that our interest is $60. So that's I. So this means 60 is equal to, now it says that you're expecting a tax refund of $1,500. So we have this $1,500 as our P. Now we don't know what the interest is. That's what we're trying to figure out, or that's what we're trying to find. It says, what weekly simple interest rate would you be paying on this loan? So we're trying to find out what I is. But we know N though. N is 3 weeks. So we have 1,500 times 3 times I because we don't know I. Now, 1,500 times 3 is 4,500, so you have 60 is equal to 4,500 I. We're solving for I. Let's give us a little bit more space. We're solving for I, so we're going to divide both sides by 4,500, and we'll have 60 over 4,500 is equal to I, or in other words, I is equal to 0.0133, which is equivalent to 1.33% weekly interest. Now remember, if you're going from your decimal to your percent, you have to move the decimal place over twice, or you have to multiply by 100. Okay, so we found, or we answered the first question. Okay, so we have our simple interest rate would be 1.33% weekly. And then it says, what is the corresponding annual rate? So the annual rate, remember, is a year, right? So if we're finding our annual rate, remember, if we're talking about a year, there are 52 weeks in a year. So that's 52 times 60 over 4,500. And you multiply those two values and you get wavy equals means approximately. So again, that means approximately. We get 0.6933, or in other words, 69.33%. Okay, so this is the section on simple interest. Now you should try your homework problems.